Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Chapalang Film Podcast. I'm your host, Seping. We also have co-host and film director, Jonathan Chu. Our guest today is Thong Kay Wee. He is the Programme Director at the Singapore International Film Festival and the former Programs and Outreach Officer at the Asian Film Archive. Welcome to the pod, Kay Wee.
Hello, hi.
Hi, hello. Welcome to the podcast, Kay Wee.
So this podcast is called Chapalang, right?
Yeah.
So we can be a bit more Chapalang and casual.
Anything goes. Anything goes. Yeah.
According to your spirit of the podcast. So.
Yeah.
Fire.
Yeah, thanks for being here. First of all, congrats on the success of the recent SGIFF. Me and John, we got the festival pass, and I think we watched almost like 30 films. And I really, wow, you have it. Wait, let me find mine.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a great investment. So I'm happy for the cinephiles. Yeah.
It is something that, we hope in a few years, it's a mainstay of it also.
Yeah. And sorry.
No, of course, when we thought of it, it's for you guys in mind, the cinephiles. Because, I know movie going isn't the cheapest thing these days with inflation. So I think that's also something that we want to reward our kind of like loyal, followers or cinema lovers. So that's something we want to do for you guys.
Yeah. It is.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
More than worth it. So maybe we can kick things off first. Perhaps you can just do a brief introduction of yourself.
As Seping has kindly introduced himself, my name is KB. So I currently work at SGIFF, or Singapore International Film Festival, and I'm the program director there. So I think, obviously my main job is to be overseeing the creative artistic decisions for the festival, and I've been maybe doing this line of work in film programming in particular for about almost 10 years now. Maybe next year will be my 10th year doing this. So, it's not a very long time so far, but it's still something that, that I have kept at it for this time. So, and like what Seping said previously, I was also working at the Film Archive, which is another kind of outfit that focuses on Asian cinema and has an archival kind of like that. So that's also quite different in terms of the job scope, although essentially we're all here to, try to promote and present good cinema to a local audience or to a regional audience.
Right. So maybe we can bring it even a little bit further back before your days at AFA. How did you fall in love with cinema? The genesis of this cinema journey for you?
Fall in love with cinema. I think it's quite easy, right? In the sense that, to me, cinema sometimes finds you, and it's during a time when, I think firstly everyone watches something, such a media saturated society, especially in Singapore. So it's oftentimes that we'll stumble into a film. We go to cinemas as a social gathering or activity. So I think that is already a very natural buy-in for me to be interested in cinema. I think the essence of cinema, I think I would like to say that I'm interested in humans. I'm interested in ideas. I'm interested in a lot of things that I feel cinema as almost, if you think about it as a container, it can contain these things, and it can even create new expressions through the media. And also cinema is one of the most accessible mediums, and I think that's why I also felt compelled to maybe choose this medium, this moving image medium, as a way to connect with people. And I think the idea of being involved in whether it's film production or film creating, that kind of connection that you can make in kind of creative endeavor, I think that can be very fulfilling artistic practice. But I think that's kind of like why I was drawn into working for this year.
Right.
In a shop. Yeah.
Right. Were there any kind of core memories you can remember? Certain films that you've seen, perhaps in the cinema or maybe even in the library in school, or that you felt that this is changing the way I'm seeing things or viewing things?
Okay, I think I never really thought about this. I mean, film so seriously until maybe I was in National Service. In the sense that there's also a time when, as maybe you guys will know, also there's a time when you are a bit lost.
Yeah.
You have maybe a lot more time to reflect about your future, your life, and there's also the juncture of everyone's life where things are a bit uncertain lah. So then, it's one of the core memories I remember was that when you are in a bunk, right, and then you have nothing else to do, then it's also a time where you don't have a lot of time to use your brain so much, think so much. So back in the day we have the portable PSP.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that you could bring into the camp.
Yeah.
And then what we do is that, really just to make yourself feel a bit better, you download things inside, media inside. Of course, you play games, but you download films inside. And then I remember, everyone might be asleep. I'm just maybe my PSP and watching films on it. And then that was a very reflective time, like I said. So then some of these films really made me think about what I want to do in life. And back then, of course, I'm thinking about being a storyteller, being using images as a way to connect people, being a filmmaker, for instance. But that really accompanied me through those times.
Right.
It was maybe, if we talk about Genesis, that was really when I really felt serious and attracted to films.
Right.
So ironically,
Actually,
it's not big screen, but the small screen really attracted me.
Yeah.
Right.
All smartphones and all.
Yeah.
Same for me. I discovered and fell in love with cinema when I was in the army. But I didn't have a PSP. So what I did is every weekend after I book out, I will go to a library at Esplanade, borrow 3-4 films, and just spend my Saturday, Sunday watching all those films. And that was how I fell in love with cinema.
Right.
So to me, it's about the time of your life, right? When you really, you just maybe don't have much going on for yourself, and you just want to consume things and learn things. Then cinema or this medium became something that's easy to access. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Yeah, I think it's the same thing for me also. NS, I was bringing sight and sound magazines, and then the bunkmates are like, "What are you doing? What are you reading?" So it was, quite a unforgettable memory there.
Kay Wee, were there any films you watched on that small little PSP that really had an imprint on you?
Wow, again, this is such a long time ago. So, I honestly can't remember what. Of course, back, and I say this maybe generally as well. A lot of people get exposed to cinema through your more popular stuff, like your American stuff. So I think I'm sure there was something that I loaded into the small PSP and watched. I can't remember exactly what titles there are back then, but no, I remember they were a great distraction from real life.
Yeah,
games being a very good medium for escapism. So I think again that was landmark time lah.
Yeah. And when did you discover independent and art house films?
Independent art house. So also during that time, then obviously I think maybe I feel like I have been quite critical even from a young age, right? So in the sense that after a while you understand formulas, then you get more hungry to want to watch more things and find out more. You become more curious, basically. So then there was also a time around the same time when you go to went to DVD shops and I went to rent DVDs, right? Because now that's not happening anymore. So then and then of course you are drawn to again the kind of posters, marketing, and maybe certain directors as well, and then you kind of discover more from there. So it's around the same time that, you either torrent or you rent DVDs. So that's what I did. Yeah, and then of course that's just a natural gateway with all these kind of DVD stores that there's some gems there that are actually intellectually, thing or more super art house. So yeah, teenage years.
Are there any specific indie titles or art house titles that really latched onto you?
Okay, I try to think of some early examples. I think, and this was maybe even before NS time, right? I think I was already renting DVDs before NS time, and then of course the PSP comes in. But I think David Fincher's films left the impression. I mean, it's earlier, and you are okay. I mean, I'm just gonna name an example, like Fight Club, for instance, right? I mean, I remember as a teenager. I mean, Fight Club is 98 or 99, right? As a really before I was a teenager, it was already around. But I've always resisted that film in the sense that I was not drawn to just men fighting around. I mean, at least that's what the marketing on the poster was about, right? But then, of course, you read up about it, you talk about it a lot back then. So you started watching it. And I think that was a memory I remember because I was inspired by it. Actually, this is the shell of it seems to be talking about, this masculinity. But then that in itself is psychosis of the society. Then you actually discover a lot of layers behind that. And of course, some of the CGI stuff as well. And of course, the music was very memorable. I mean, up to the characters, the development. So then you really appreciate that, it's not just some dumb male film. There's a lot of layers. Then I started to appreciate the kind of writing and directorial approach. Yeah. And of course, then, there's also the source material, which is super novel. So, I mean, this is just a very early example to talk about that really made me think more about cinema.
Maybe we can now speak about your time at AFA. AFA, how did you got into the Asian Film Archive? How do you got about starting your film career there?
Okay, I think the simple answer really is I applied for a job and I got it, honestly. And of course, there's also down to timing. There's also down to luck. But so before that, of course, I think I went to kind of like a media school, right? So I did study cinema studies there, and this is already when I think again back in the NS burgeoning days, thinking about what you want to do in your life, and then that was something that I wanted to approach to try to make films at that time, right? Think about films, and of course I think these are all kind of related, right? Because that's my degree, in a sense, it's my training, and I also joined film festival practicum back then, which was in its very, very early years. So this was, I believe, that was part of the second year back then. So these are also things that made me think that there's a possibility to actually pursue this as a practice, not just making films, but there's also enjoyment in sharing films and curating films with your vision to people. And it was actually very inspiring in the sense that back then it was still very small, art house theater, so it's not a lot of audience. So it's 70 seats. But then people came up to me and had conversations, and those are very inspiring. Then at the end of the day, as an artist, so as a filmmaker or curator, you just want to connect people with your work, and that I found fulfillment. That gave me an idea of maybe making films and the way you want to isn't the easiest way to earn money, right? And then I freelanced for about a year so actually after graduation. So I did a lot of kind of production housework. Maybe Jonathan, you understand. That wasn't really actually something that inspired me. Those taught me different things. Those taught me different sets in terms of producing, how systems work within film set. And I could do a job as well. I wasn't half fed about it. So I freelanced I had an internship and I freelanced about a year doing even directing actually. directing, script writing, assistant producing. But then there was the grind which I didn't really enjoy, and that wasn't fulfilling.
Right.
Me.
Yep.
So then, I was looking out for different opportunities. So I remembered the fulfillment that I had while presenting films, and then the opportunity comes. Back then, this is about 2013, I believe, maybe early 2014. And in Asian Film Archive wasn't maybe the institution recognized now. They didn't have the cinema. The office space was at like tucked away far in Changi area, following like the National Library supply center. And also it was really near a warehouse. So it was maybe in its very burgeoning years as well. But that to me was also very exciting, because then I see maybe a place for me to maybe grow together with the institution and to also help apply some of my ideas and skill sets to the institution. And when I joined, I believe I was maybe the third or fourth person that joined. So for quite a few years, there was only 2 people, and then hired an admin person, and I was the 4th person. And then back then there was no like programming, even like in the mindset of carving out this institution. I was just an outreach officer.
Right.
But then how I interpreted outreach, I mean, I took it in various space. So to me, outreach also means programming. So of course, then it evolved into my kind of like final title before I left. Like, is this a combination of both things? Are programs, outreach officer? So so that's the kind of like long-winded answer. The simple truth is that I applied, I went for interview, and they chose me. And I guess I was lucky.
Right.
Back when the opportunity was around.
Right. Because like what you said, AFA right now, there's OHAMs and there's OHAM theater. There's something tangible people can put a finger on. There's clear social media marketing and all that. Those burgeoning days that you were speaking about, I'm quite interested to know what are some of the specific activities or maybe even programs you all were doing maybe in your first few years over there. Yeah.
And also maybe we need to rewind back and understand a bit of the environment back then.
Right.
The sense that SGIFF itself only kind of restarted in 2014.
Yeah.
And when I was a student, there was not so much very conscious, or at least in my opinion, very conscious Singapore International Film Festival, because it also had a hiatus about 2 or 3 years, right? So then there was the environment back then. We had other so-called institutions that were also doing film programming, and maybe you guys will remember like Substation, National Museum, Cinema Tech, Objectives was also around. But these were like kind of the layers around. Then Asian Film Archive was an institution that kind of like just almost rebranded themselves in the sense that they came under the wing of National Library Board, and that gave them more resources.
Yeah.
Then that could restart for what was previously a very independently run archive. Joining AFA and having the kind of like mindset of not just producing programs, but how do you produce programs that outreach, right? Reach out to audiences with something audience oriented in mind, while also thinking about profiling it, increasing publicity. So in my early years, like my almost like first, I would say 3 to 4 years or so, I was also kind of like looking after publicity. So it was like I was a Swiss Army knife basically. This was like kind of like my experience on film sets as well. Like you can do everything, you can produce, events manage, maybe think about marketing strategies, and also curate. So some of the things that we identified back then was we need to learn about what the archives objectives are about, what it should be doing. Things I started to this was before Odin Theatre came about in 2019. But there was a few years, like about 4 or 5 years of foundational work that still needed to happen ad hoc with various venue partners. They can also increase consciousness in public. And so some of the programs that I initiated back then, I think we did I find it quite memorable. It's like one of these film showcases called Asian Restored Classics.
Oh,
I think,
yeah.
So this was of course not just my decision. Team working together as well. That we feel like we need to find again our kind of specialties, right? And then of course you're called Asian and you're called film and you're called art. So of course Asian being the mandate. And then I don't think there's a lot of places around the world even that actually have a dedicated showcase for new restoration works to Asian cinema. So there's something that a gap that we identified, and then we said we should make it conscious. Then there's also the educational agenda to it, that people learn about the importance of preservation, restoration, and then why these classics are important, which is then harking back to history. Of film history being very important. I think we are living in a place where there's a lot of historical amnesia going on. So I think that was one of the agendas that very well suits the institution's agenda.
Right.
Then the other program that I also initiated was this program called State of Motion. So State of Motion is kind of like almost like an accident, in the sense that National Arts Council, like I said, I was trying to approach different kind of different partners that can also provide resources, platform to do stuff. And then National Arts Council was one of them who invited us to be involved in Singapore Art Week, which is still something that's going on these days. So then I think when they first approached us, they were very simple about it. They were like, maybe AFA can just program some films that are about like art, very, very generally. But I think we took it to the next level. We wanted something again that actually encourages communities, maybe artistic communities or different types of public profile, to think about the archive, film collection, engages it and even activate it, be inspired by it, and even create new works or understanding out of it. And also tying in with a certain component which is touching on different facets of Singapore film history, and even some regional film history as well. So then again, that points back to the kind of like anchor of what the archive does, but also gives it a new life, gives programming a new life. So I think that's constantly what I want to do, to fill in gaps that maybe within Singapore we don't have, and also to inspire to innovate new ideas, to bring in different entry points for audiences or different industry publics to engage with us. So these are the kind of thinkings that kind of molded how I think about programming mandate.
Yeah, one of the programs I really enjoyed at AFA way back was a series of panel discussions you guys organized at Film Guide Bugis. I don't know if you remember.
Of course I remember.
Yeah.
So that's
that
I was also quite interested in back then already, in the sense that I feel like there's always been a gap in terms of a gap between film history, film practitioners, and film academics, right? So then I was very interested to maybe come up with a series that engages with all these sectors, and obviously everyone intersects in a way, but they're never really thought of being put in the same platform and being discussed in that sense. So then we started to what I initiated this reframe series. So the idea of reframing is also to think about really think deeply into cinemas and cultures behind it, and also the studies around it, right? So that we started the initial first few editions was something that I programmed myself, and then we invited different professionals, maybe not everyone just from the industry, not just a filmmaker, but filmmakers mixing with film academics, and then everyone had a chance to interact with each other, spar with each other. And also then there was a film screening component to it, that we can all together analyze films together and provide a certain entry point for the audience. When they watch films, they can think about this thing. And then to this day, I feel like that's something that should be part of a lot of film program ideas. Yeah, not just simply watch a film, applause, and leave. Which is of course something like what you guys doing here are quite important. We are discussing about this cinema and the culture around. Yeah.
before we get to SGIFF, I'm very curious to know, because you spent 6 years at AFA, right?
Yeah, around 6.5. Yeah, around 6 years.
Yeah. Like 6 years is a very long time. Did you at any point think to yourself, what's my next career trajectory? What's potentially life for me after AFA?
Of course.
Yeah.
Back to production house.
I mean, of course, there's something that came to mind, maybe not so seriously, but I think this is it's almost endemic of the industry, in the sense that we don't have a lot of placements around. I mean, also we don't have a lot of institutions around that focuses on film lah, as a medium. I mean, we always have something, but they come and go. So in the sense that the idea of what next is, because what I do is also specialized. That at that time, I actually don't see a lot of other places that I could be within Singapore, or in terms of career progression, like if you would like. So of course the thoughts could be, and go further studies, and go overseas and actually interact with what's outside as well. And I mean, that's also one way to expand yourself, right? I mean, work overseas. So these are things that of course cross my mind, and maybe that's accompanied with again further studies curriculum.
Yeah.
But of course, what led me to where I am now, in the sense. But, sorry.
But even before we go there, right, what made you stay for 6.5 years? Was there any point at like the 3rd year or even the 5th year you thought to yourself, maybe I should go and do my masters, or maybe I should try working at another film festival? What made you stay so long?
I think, and maybe this is, you can say credit to the institution, in the sense that they gave me a lot of creative freedom to apply myself, practice. So then, in that sense, there was room to grow, because I could, work with people that are more knowledgeable than me, and we can work guest curators for this. I can learn things with different programs, and of course, the practice of curating was still something that I wanted to sharpen, and those years, you can say, was necessary for myself. And also, the truth was that maybe around 2018 or so. So this was maybe like I was like 3 or 4 years in. I knew about the Odom Theatre project. So that's also something that was something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And then we almost kind of like, I have a hand kind of like carving a new so-called regular cinema. And I think that was exciting for the for the scene, for the culture. And I wanted to see through that. At least, and then once that happens, so at least give it a year or so to establish itself, to consolidate its program, and to have a certain identity before I can say that my kind of work is done and I can pass it along. Of course, as we know, COVID happened, so that also had some repercussions to what we call establishing a certain presence, consciousness. And of course, till today, I think it's still a work in progress. But at least, I can say that I'm quite proud that I was the first person to, at that time, also the only programmer to kind of kickstart it. I gave it certain strengths, certain programming identities, then had maybe enough to call audienceship, even started initiated a kind of VFA Friends membership as well. Before I left. And I think that's also quite important to me. I feel like wherever I work, I would like to leave it in a better place as compared to where I started. I think that's part of my responsibility going into any cultural work. Yeah.
What were some of the things that you said that you work with guest curators who are quite knowledgeable in the field? What were some of the things that really stayed with you working with them? You learn about this craft.
I think so. Talking about the Reframe series, I think there was And I mean, we have to understand that when I started this job, I was still young. I'm still young, but in the sense that I was in my mid-20s. So I think after a while, you also run out of ideas, and working in silos actually isn't the best thing. I mean, we actually need sounding boards to get rounds of ideas. So then I craved that. And hence then I started to seek out other people who should. And there's so many people out there, I mean, not just locally, but everywhere that has things to say, has their own kind of like domain of knowledge, right? And especially academics. But maybe sometimes academics don't really know how to create an event that's audience. So then there's something that I can bring to the table. So that's almost where I also saw my role as a producer, or events manager, to help them create the kind of right settings, language, publicity for it. So then, I think I started to work with more like academics that I'm interested in their research. For instance, this high research, I think that was maybe the first reframe that we so-called outsourced to other people. So I've already known him for a while. So his name is Grywood. So his kind of specialty is about, the forest cinema in the sense. And then talking about the Anthropocene and all that. And this was like maybe 6 years ago or something when it was quite a topical thing to talk about with cinema. So, and then I also invited him to give kind of like a public lecture about it. So that's also things that. Then I also invited people to talk about. I mean, there's a program that we did. It's about eco cinema in the sense, and we had a symposium around it. And same people, it was like Ben Slater, for example, brought in the kind of like, his program is called Singaporeana, and it's about the kind of like tourist gaze that was prevalent in cinemas or films shot in Singapore, 60s, 70s, and how that was, and we kind of dissect that kind of gaze, like touristic colonial gaze. So again, these are things that I gleaned from, made friends with those people, and get inspired by them.
Yeah, and I noticed the year you started working at Asian Film Archive is the year that SGIFF returned from their hiatus. You spent about 6 years as AFA, but also I'm sure as an audience member of SGIFF, I'm sure you went to SGIFF every year since it returned.
Yeah,
I'm just curious, like what is your experience as an audience member at SGIFF during those 6 years?
Okay, and also I think by then I'm also not a simple audience member. I'm already part of it in a sense. So then it becomes sometimes friends gathering, industry gatherings. So core memories of film festival was, of course, a chance to talk about the films after the screening, to see, like-minded people like yourselves, at screenings last time as well. And then meet overseas friends and make friends. I mean, I think these are, and I always feel like festivals are very social events, and it needs to be in a set, because then it needs to be people coming together from all over the world to celebrate, right, this art form. And then again, core memories are hanging out with people, like, drinking, talking, till like late, very late, like, even some programmers like and 3-4 a.m. and then they have to start work the next day. Wow, go and watch another film there. And also at the same time, I was already, putting on my programmer cap on, right? So also, what films maybe I program after that, that makes sense, who I want to be familiarized with or be acquainted with, and then to use the opportunity, the festival opportunity, to make these connections. So yeah, I mean, I honestly, with the kind of like rebranding of the film festival, I was already not simple. I gained from my position as a lecturer.
When did the opportunity to become program director come to you? Tell us the whole story.
Well, again, honestly, the whole truth is the same. I applied for the job and they gave it to me. And I guess I was lucky in a sense. I mean,
Oh, you applied. I thought maybe they reached out to you or something.
so okay. I mean, the honest truth here is a mixture of both. And the honest truth is also, I mean, to be completely frank, it was actually not something else because it was also something that there was a job call, it was advertised. I mean, as one of the, I mean, as part of the industry, we're all a bit curious, but I also think maybe slightly nervous, right? Because we're just not sure who is available, especially this during kind of the heat of the pandemic as well. And I think one thing was very clear. I mean, maybe I speak on behalf of the hirers or the board that I think we all agreed that they need to find someone that's locally based, and especially with pandemic. So, but I honestly wasn't thinking of like throwing my name into the hat until yes, there was a approach. I'm not gonna name people like as a who spoke to me, but then that made me think that, oh, okay, maybe it's time to step up. This gap has to be filled again. And I feel like again, like when I talk about career, it's often about filling gaps, right? So then I think there was a bit of a void in terms of industry profiles that were around that was available to do the job. And then, okay, I mean, since I was kind of like asked to apply, then why not? And I was also curious about the hiring process. And then of course, one thing led to another, and then like what Sabine you said, right? I mean, 6+ years was a long time, and then we were talking about what else is there in the horizon that I could do that is a bit different. That is different from like current work that I'm plowing on for many years. Honestly, when I was still at AFA and working in very small teams or by myself for a long time, that is also one way of working that. But also I have experience burnt out. So then I'm also interested in a bigger team that, that I could also be part of the build and then be a bit of a leadership role that maybe I don't find that kind of as an opportunity this time of this job. Yeah. So then, the plunge, for some reason, I'm here.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't think there's anyone in Singapore other than you that's like most suited for the job. Like with your breadth of experience and all that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, like, I mean, to me, I mean, even now, I feel like, I mean, we spoke on national service, right? To me, it's almost like thinking about it like kind of national service. Right. If I really wanted if you really wanted a cushy life, we wouldn't be here. I mean, John, you wouldn't be still like kind of making films, plowing around.
Yep.
Same thing, like wouldn't be still writing about films. So, I see it as national service. That I'm happy to apply myself at this juncture. Maybe you ask me, 2 years time, who knows what happens. But I'm happy to contribute whatever means I can.
Yeah. So your role at the festival is Programme Director. And there's also another role called Executive Director. Maybe you could start off by, explaining to the audience, to our listeners, what is the mandate of the Programme Director, and how is this role different from the role of Executive Director?
I think by the definition itself, the Programme Director or I mean, there was a time when there was an artistic director as well at the festival. I mean, as the name suggests, we are the ones that are solely in charge of the programming, right, the curation. So that's something that is our specialty. Then, of course, I'm in charge of building my own program team and going through the processes with them. Then the executive director is looking up the rest of the components. I mean, this includes many things, but there are other departments like marketing, hospitality, partnerships, right, and fundraising. Simply put, think about the executive producer as the producer on the film set, and then I'm the kind of director. I'm in charge of the creative. But then the ED is there to support the vision, align with the vision, support the vision, and also help make things happen.
Right.
So, although of course, in actuality, it's not so straightforward in terms of the vision. Of course, I'm also involved in many different aspects, lah. I mean, especially where maybe some of my colleagues have been new. So, like for instance, in terms of marketing, which is also quite creative actually as a job, and that also ties in intrinsically with the films that we showcase. Then my job is also to educate them in terms of like quote unquote the products that they need to market. So then these are all the overlaps that needs to happen, or things like maybe I will know more about the industry. Like there are overseas film agencies that I should be recommending the executive director or the partnership team to try to find more resources. That these are things that I need to chip in.
Can you give us and our listeners a sense of the scale of running SGIFF? So for myself, right, like I have volunteered and I've worked at a few like national film festivals. Most of them are organized by Singapore Film Society. So, Japanese Film Festival, the Singapore Chinese Film Festival, but they're all relatively on a smaller scale compared to SGIFF. Typically at these national festivals, the film program is anywhere between 10 to at most 40, 50 films. But at SGIFF is a whole other scale. So can you give us like how big is SGIFF, and what's the challenges of the job?
I mean, we maybe use this year as a template, right? So this year we 101 titles, and I think more than 80 screening sessions. That's one. And this is only one, I mean, of course, a major facet, but only one facet of the festival. Because aside from that, we need to think about film industry programs. So, of course, we also do talks. And there's also another kind of like curation going to that. We also do what we call the Film Academy, which is, again, the film industry development programs. So there's like another whole facet to it, right? Where we need to think about the applications, curriculum, and then conduct it. And this happens like, on weekdays before the screening happens, evening times. So then there's a whole other component to think about, which no other, like national film showcases or festivals do in that sense. And also as part of a kind of like festival culture, we also need to think about hospitality as well, because SGIFF probably is the only festival that hosts, a lot of a huge number of overseas filmmakers, and then that is also another whole facet of the work in terms of hospitality that we need to think about. Who is there to pick up the people from the airport? Who is there to host them for dinners? And then think of like again networking events, parties. So, a film festival is not just presenting, selecting the films. It's also curating the experience. And also thinking about gatherings, about the ambience, about how to make people feel welcomed, and and how do we facilitate the interactions and the meeting between the audience, the press, industry members, and filmmakers. So these are things that we need to think of from a holistic level. Yeah. So in the sense, that is maybe like 3 or 4 more things to do than just a smaller kind of like festival program lah. With lesser people visiting or presenting the films.
Yeah, I mean, you guys program more than 100 films. That's a lot, which leads me to the next part of our conversation, which is curation and programming. Obviously, the festival starts in late November, but I'm sure for the first 11 months, you guys are as equally busy. Can you just give us an idea of what you do in the 11 months leading up to the festival? Yeah.
When is the downtime? When is the really high time? Assuming the few months prior to that is probably super intense. Yeah.
Yeah, and also and also a related question that you can answer as part of your overall answer is when you go out, obviously you travel to different film festivals to look at films. When do you start conceptualizing the different sections and the different programs at the festival? Yeah.
Okay. So maybe I'll use an analogy first, right? And maybe this is comparing to my previous job. Because, okay, AFA is a year-long program, right? We do regular programs month to month, week to week. So often that feels like I have to do constant sprints. Okay. So that is, its own labor, and especially when you're doing it mostly sometimes alone. For SGIFF, I will compare it to a marathon. But the last third of the marathon, we need to sprint together as a team. And it's a longer sprint in the sense for the last stretch. So the kind of like fatigue is different, but there's the kind of like pace that we're going at. So then back to the 11 months, what do we do in the 11 months? Of course, now, the festival ended about 2-3 weeks ago. Now it's downtime, so we can talk now freely here, in the sense. Then we have to look at again the kind of festival calendar international, and the next bigger festivals that happen would be in January, when Sundance and Rotterdam, and then after that, subsequently Berlinale. So then these are when things need to start for preparation. Of course, if you know, everyone has like kind of work experience, there's a financial year. But you also need to prepare for the year ahead, kind of budgets going in. So then the first quarter of the year, you need to plan for that. And that includes things like recruitment, right? Things like think about the organization chart and what we want to achieve this year as compared to last year. So there's a lot of like reflection from the edition that passed. And also, we are already starting to watch films. So watching films is a year-long thing. Then, again, using this year as an example, call for entry started around mid-May. So then already, streams of like new films comes in that we have to start plowing through. Yeah. And then we also don't just do one event at the end of the year. So there are like things that we do, for instance, like educational outreach events. We go to schools, give school talks. We recently have been on the NAC's Artistic Elective program, which we put out paid curriculum for schools, MOE schools, school society. So these are things that we also try to do it on a regular basis if someone picks it up. And then we also try to do community screenings. So these are also pre-festival things that we need to organize for. And also fundraising events as well. So multiple things happen before the festival that we need to prepare for, while we also need to pace ourselves in the marathon to prepare for the last sprint, keep traveling, networking, meeting people, finding films, talk to distributors, and watch this stuff. That's the main core of my job. But also then at the same time to also, at least in my last 2 or 3 years working at the festival, to also almost be a sounding board or consultant for other departments. What they need, what they should be doing, like thinking about marketing strategies, campaigning, even things like design, key visuals, like that also very much relies on the creative direction. So yeah, constantly it's new questions being asked to me and problem solving, and then we go down to maybe the last third of the year when it's really about a nitty-gritty. Or whether there's enough like photographers being distributed to the right events, or whether the venues have the right screens for the right aspect ratio, or how can we do film traffic, and how can we get this to us efficiently, and also whether the venues are right or not. And then there's a lot of like cost outlay stuff, pay, negotiation of screening fees, venue fees, so on and so forth. Right. So I would say that currently my job, 50% is watching films and thinking about films. Right. The other 50%, a lot of it is logistics, events management, and even like think about hospitality.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned about design and all these visuals and everything. It got me thinking about how film festivals are each year they have a concept as well, right? It's like exhibition, there's a theme, there's an everything. And some of these things I suppose can be quite hard to kind of put together, especially when you're at the start, it's like now we are back at the drawing board. It's a empty page again. How do you kind of connect the dots between departments to kind of get something a little bit more tangible and more solid, and then build on from there?
Sure. And I would also confess that it's still a kind of work in progress. I mean, it's so, it will always take a while when you work with a team and people coming with different experiences of film and backgrounds. So it takes a while to gel. So maybe it hasn't always been the smoothest thing to kind of like relay what I wanted creatively as a direction, and then how it's being translated as output. But I would say that this year perhaps is the year that I'm most satisfied in terms of marketing and then branding design. But thinking about year on year, how do you even think about translating that or communicating those ideas to the public? And then before that, to my marketing team. So previous years of the festival, maybe you guys would remember, there are so-called themes that we have. I think when I came in, I do feel that sometimes this performs as slogans, like more marketing slogans. But essentially the work that we do, we're here to promote contemporary cinema majority, right? I mean, the latest, the New Year's output of films. I mean, we are the forefront of that, present those things. And then our kind of identity is that we are regional centric, in the sense that we support the region, Southeast Asia and Asia, and then that's evident with our program. And these are things that we do year on year, and I don't think that should change. But then how do we differentiate it? I mean, to me, I tell my team that it's about the programming philosophy going in, and then to take inspiration from that. But then, every year there can be different design iteration that is inspired by the same thing. Because I also don't feel the need to keep coming out with new marketing slogans every year. And then that becomes a kind of, I mean, to me, it becomes a bit artificial. So I'd rather that she's taking inspiration from the same core thing that we do, which we believe in, and just for the designers to work something creatively year on year.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, I mean, of course, like I said, it's a work in progress, but hopefully in terms of like support this legacy that
right,
that people can see in these few years that I'm around, that you see this evolution,
right,
that is inspired by the same thing,
right,
which is back to the programming.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's really good, because it's also more organic. You don't put this whole pressure of like, oh, what's the theme this year? Like how Singapore NDP, like when a new committee take over, it's like,
how many times can you
have
a slogan that's patriotic, right?
Correct. Yeah. Then it's like the more you try to come up with 5 different words to put up, right, the more it remains the same. So yeah.
How many songs can you create? Right?
Yeah. Correct.
But yeah, I mean, so I think that's something that I was interested to help when I joined.
Sure.
Let's move on to the actual program in the festival. There is the competition section, which comprise of the Asian feature film competition and the Southeast Asian short film competition. And then there is also Singapore Panorama, which is a non-competitive section that showcases Singapore films. And then you have half a dozen other sections. You have Foreground, which presents like genre-driven kind of films. Then you have Altitude, you have Horizon, Standpoint, Undercurrent, Domain, and Landmark. A few of these sections are relatively new. Like in the previous iterations of the festival, of course, the competitive section has always been consistent. The Asian feature film and Southeast Asian short film competition and the Singapore Panorama has always existed. I think what's different in the past, there used to be Asian Vision and Cinema Today, but that's no longer exists. It has been reconceptualized into the half a dozen sections that I just mentioned. So I'm just curious to learn the thought process behind that rebranding or redesign of the film program.
Of course, a lot of thought was put into it, and I will also acknowledge that, a lot of things is trial and error. It's a work in progress. I mean, we're also trying to test the market, test the audience, whether they're receptive to these things, whether it works or not. So this is something that we're going to gather year on year. But I think simply put, I wasn't so that much taken by only thinking about cinema through a regional approach. Okay, I do see I acknowledge the legacy, and I do think that there's importance to it, and the importance in terms of how we also position ourselves against or with the world, in the sense that the other international festivals. I mean, very simply put, I think Asian feature film competition is something that happened, at the start of this festival. I mean, the early 90s. So and it has a legacy to it that's important and still remains important. So it was one of the first Asian centered competitions, and it was against a time when people are not really thinking about Asian cinema, or are not thinking about Asian cinema in a very extensive. So we're also talking about kind of like cultural so-called structures where it's very Eurocentric, very North American centric. It still remains today, but the festivals there would sometimes almost treat Asian cinema historically as like a sidebar, or something to sample from, right? Whereas SIFF or SGIFF now was one of the first players to play around. So I think that remains, and that's important, because there's still not, I mean, even today, there's not a lot of people that actually gives the emphasis to the region. So that's one thing I think is important. And also, I mean, this idea of Asianness should also be diverse, in the sense that, you have things like Golden House, which is, sure, it's Asian, but it's also, East Asian and Chinese language.
Right.
Yeah. And then, and you will see natural biases with, all the kind of national city film festivals, like the Japanese do, of course, look more into Japanese cinema and so on and so forth, which of course then we do that also. I mean, we have to support I would still say our burgeoning kind of local film industry. We need to give them that kind of space. So one way is that, if it's, I would say, competitive enough to the other cinemas out there, then it's also very worthwhile to other sections. Like to say the Asian feature film competition, which we had this year, like 3 inside. Yeah. And then if a film actually, to me, has a stronger identity somewhere else in another section, of course it's there as well. But then the Singapore Panorama section is also, to me, a very important space where we can look at the output of the year that could fall into that space that we offer. Yeah. So back to how to rebrand, kind of like thinking of sections. Then previously it was like Asian feature, Asian Vision and Cinema Today, which maybe to me doesn't signpost enough about what they are about, in terms of giving these sections certain characteristics, or even curating films or seeing them in a certain way. I'm interested in this rebranding both as a curatorial exercise and as an outreach exercise, and maybe that's my background coming, because I'm actually trying to find the best way to still maintain some kind of creative liberty towards thinking of cinema in a more fluid way, outside of genres, outside of regions, but then also matchmaking it with like interests that people have. For instance, if someone is more interested in current affairs, we read news all the time, and there are a lot of issue-based stuff that's important, and we acknowledge that as well. I think cinema can play a part. in terms of communicating these things. And that's why I think of section like standpoint really matters, right? Because then it strongly signals to people that this is a section that maybe is more in touch with these things that matter in reality. And we can, through cinema, have a discursive environment, dialogue with each other, audience to filmmaking. Yeah, and also that's why, like, for standpoint, as much as possible, we try to have some kind of like dialogue with the filmmaker, Q&A, because I think that's more important than some of the other sections. Okay.
Kay Wee, for the benefit of the audience who might not know these different sections, can you just briefly describe Asian Vision, Cinema Today, and Standpoint?
Right. So, I mean, okay, Asian Vision and Cinema Today was sections that existed last time. So, maybe, again, I'm not involved back then, so I'm also kind of interpreting it. But Asian Vision basically is where it's a program of Asian cinema that's not in the competitive section. Yeah, I mean that's how I see it. And then Cinema Today mostly comprises of non-Asian titles that are contemporary films. I mean that's how I kind of interpreted it from the duration last time. Yeah, but then there's kind of like new sections that we're thinking. So Standpoint, just as an example, Standpoint is a section that showcases like strong attitudes that has a lot of resonance to current affairs or to real life. And it need not be documentaries, it just needs to have a strong stance on a certain topic. And there is worth dialoguing, and it's also something that as the festival we want to and comfortable to platform for.
Right.
Yeah. And then I mean there are other sections, for instance, foreground. Okay, so maybe talking about the whole overarching idea first. I'm interested in positions. I'm interested in where audience position themselves when they encounter a piece of work, right? So hopefully this signposting can prime people to think about how to approach it.
Right.
And then maybe there could be a more effective way of matchmaking people's interest to even want to encounter them. So that's why like all these names has something to do with positions.
Sure.
Positionalities. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So then another example, foreground. For instance. To me, again, as the name such as foreground is something that's maybe the most apparent or obvious to you. And that's why we think about popular cinema and think about genre works there. And genre works there are genres is something, basically genres are accessible formulas that people understand more easily and subscribe to, because there's a history to that. And then also, and we also curate more so-called popular cinema. Of course, they are also of quality, but you can see, like there are maybe like bigger stars or people that are more excited about these films. So then we position them in foreground.
Right.
Yeah. So that I want people to also be conscious about what they're going into and why it's obvious to them. And maybe once they understand why it's obvious to them, maybe they're interested in the rest of the position. Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, these are just two examples to share. I mean,
Sure.
Go into too much.
Yeah, I'm curious, right? Because there were 3 editions with a genre section called Midnight Mayhem, and I think from 2020 onwards, this section was dropped, and obviously now foreground, as you just described, in a way, it's the new genre section.
In a way, yeah.
So I'm curious, why didn't you keep Midnight Mayhem? Why did you decide to rebrand the genre section into foreground?
Okay, so firstly, just to preface this, right? Midnight Mayhem was dropped before I joined. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So firstly, to preface that, of course, I could have revived it, right? But I mean, it's not something that's out of the table, and I also see the appeal to it.
Right.
And you can already imagine a certain profile of films for this, which can be quite exciting. Yeah. But to me, it's also going with this kind of like new overarching so-called programming philosophy. I mean, we could also have a midnight film. We just don't need to frame it under a section. I mean,
Right.
it could be a crazy genre film that we screen around midnight. I mean, also just share film screening at midnight would be more costly for venue rent.
Okay.
So of course, I mean, that's just a naming thing. So it's not something that we abandon in terms of like viewing diversity or a certain approach. It's just a different way of like labeling and naming. And I think at the end of the day, we also do acknowledge, and I'm sure you guys can understand as well. Sections sometimes it's just, especially non-competition section, just a way of us presenting certain frameworks. But at the end of the day, that you have a festival pass, it's just a guideline.
Yep.
You can also feel free to read up the synopsis, read up what films actually interest you. You can chart your own path throughout this term. And that's also the very much the fun of it, that you guys are given a license to choose your festival offerings.
Right.
So maybe we were just thinking more as guidelines that can help us people to counter.
I got a question about the curation, right? Which is because earlier before SGIFF this year, I went to the Mental Health Film Festival, which was the films were programmed by Alexander and his team. And Alexander used to be part of SGIFF programming team as well. In order to program 8 films, I think it's 8 films, he had to like watch through hundreds, right? And I can't imagine how much you and your team have to comb through in order to come down to this 101 titles. What is the estimated number of films that you all watch? And the second part to this question is, how do you come to the final selection? Because I would assume that there will be some films that you guys can easily get behind, but it's perhaps not the best fit, or like maybe this is for another festival or something like that.
Yeah, I do have the numbers somewhere. It's just that I don't have. But as you can imagine, if the mental health film festival watches about 100 plus film and then selects about 8, then you can imagine the kind of ratio to that. So 101 titles this includes short films, of course, then we were easily watching 10 times or more to narrow it down to that selection. And of course, we work as a team. I don't watch everything.
Right.
We also work with external reviewers, which is a team of them. And then, of course, I have like assistants and then the exec team as well. So we share the load, but it's definitely a team effort. And of course, then back to how do we kind of like narrow down to my own thinking about selecting a film that firstly within a team, it can't be less than 2 people. At least 2 people needs to watch so that there's a dialogue. And most of the films that I selected, I also will go through them myself. Be part of it. So then, we, as much as possible, we try to be as robust. Discussion. So of course, it's almost like you're gonna make sure one reviewer before it gets into production. Then it's we cross watch, right? If someone recommends something else, I will get that watching. So it's back to the reasons behind selecting it. Like you said, I think there are a lot of multitude of factors.
Sure.
Like things could be because of cost or because of release dates that doesn't match with our festival dates. We stop things. Of course, there are also things that we acknowledge that we have certain inclinations. So like Singapore films, that we are inclined to maybe give it more space for it, or even Southeast Asian cinema. So these are also things that we keep in mind. And then, but by and large, and I hope that's the process, the rigorous process that we offer is really big. And of course, it's very hard to, it's a very subjective place to be, right? But we try to be, as much as possible, to be as objective within our team, before we set up. Yeah, constant dialogue. Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I was programming for the Japanese Film Festival, which is organized by Singapore Film Society,
Yeah.
it's always this tension, right? Between, obviously you want people to attend your festival and watch the films, and also during the curation process, you would come across films that are artistically more interesting and more challenging, but instinctively you know that the audience for these kind of films are smaller. So how do you balance that for SGIFF between curating films that are like artistically like interesting and they're worth showcasing, versus ensuring that the films that you put in the program can attract a sufficient enough audience to justify the millions of dollars that are spent at this festival?
Yeah. I mean, this is an age-old question, right? And I think, you've already mentioned the word. It's about how to strike that balance, and it can go down to really understanding statistics, understanding the ratio of like weightage of such films that we can put out, and also what films we are confident in terms of audience outreach, and then what makes sense in terms of like putting in investments. I mean, it's very important for us to all know that if you are just interested in getting numbers, I mean, there's a way to do it, and I think it's not that hard to do. It's not hard to identify a popular cinema and then like screen 5-10 times, and then maybe I would have earned much more. I mean, I could screen Miyazaki every day, and I could earn more. Whole 10 days festival, for instance. I mean, that's the truth. But of course, that's not the point of us doing this. So, and of course, we need to balance the integrity of our work. Like, for instance, like Seping said, we encounter artistically interesting, and in fact, maybe offer something new as an expression. Then, our responsibility as a purveyor of cinema, new cinema, contemporary cinema, then I think it's something that is worthwhile for us to platform and then show it. And that has its place as well, even though maybe only gets, I don't know, like 50 people in the hall. Of course, everything is seen in relative to own. We need to chart its own history, right? This all history. Like, let's say we screen a highly experimental film, and we can name something random, but and also coming from like a very random place, so Somalia or something, right? So you have already a very small pool of people that are interested in this context, but also a very small pool of people that are interested in experimenting case, like or sampling something very new. Do we screen that? Then to me, that's down to merits. Putting the so-called the cultural context aside, if the expression is something really groundbreaking, and I mean this regardless of whether you won what awards or whatever, that's also there as a recommendation. And maybe it's already something that's worth putting out, because film festivals should also be a place of discovery as well. I mean, it should be a cultural leader in terms of leading people into learning about or understanding new forms of cinema. Yeah, and also we shouldn't be shy about wanting to lead people's taste, even though that will always be a work in progress, especially in Singapore, when our film literacy or cultural literacy isn't the most mature at this point in life history. So all the more we need to lead the way. Yeah. So, but like I said, we need to pick our battles, and we cannot have 20 of these films. No, then we need to pick maybe, like, say, 6 or 8 of this type of best films that are unknown discoveries and that artistically very good.
Can you share some of these films that fall under that kind of category from this year's festival?
Sure. Let me just quickly run through. Okay, so for instance, there is this double bill, okay, that we did in the undercurrent section. Okay, it's a double bill of this title is called Undefined Things by Maria Aparicio from Argentina. So it's quite a new young filmmaker that's been making waves. We paired it with Jean-Luc Godard's so-called final shot. Okay. Firstly, of course, I think they are interesting films or noteworthy films in their own right. And then we're also interested in the chemistry it has or the dialogue it has that's double bill paired together. And this, to note, we screened Undefined Things, which is an 81-minute film, before the short film, which is a 20-minute film by Godard. Okay, it's called Trailer of the Film That Will Never Exist. Only was. Okay, so that's what it's called. The strategy going in is also that we are very taken by this new Argentine filmmakers, but then we also know that it might not be the most attractive thing for people, especially I don't name from a faraway country, have stars in it, and maybe build escalator. I mean, it's a hybrid type of documentary. It's quite interesting. So the strategy here is that I guess everyone cinephiles knows who Godard is. There's also the final film, which is true. I mean, that is the film that he couldn't complete before his death. So by putting them together, what we are hoping is people get a chance to watch this final Godard film, but also because of that gets to experience and encounter a new young Argentina people filmmakers. So that is the kind of audience outreach strategy that we're thinking of as well. So it's not just we love this weird film from faraway country and then leave it alone there and don't take care of it. We are also custodians of this offerings. As much as possible, we need to try to take care of it. Can we do it properly all the time? Maybe not. This is all back to resources. For instance, can we dedicate the same marketing efforts to some of these titles versus whole things? For instance, it's a Yorgos Lanthimos film, won Golden Lion at Venice, Emma Stone, big stars like that. Truth is no, but because we also need to be strategic. But like I said, we need to be compared relatively to the history of the audience. If let's say 50 people goes to this film screening, to me, I'm satisfied with it. I mean, I don't expect a complete full house, but as compared to maybe out of the festival, someone screens this, maybe 10 people will be there. Yeah. So I think the important thing is that we also need to measure success relatively to each agenda. Yeah, and as much as possible, take care of the selection that we do, and don't kind of abandon it. So everything that we do, we still try to be audience oriented, while also trying to be sample discovered. So yeah, there's no easy answer to this, I mean, there's no kind of easy math solution to this. This is just one example that I can share that goes into all the things.
Yeah, I think this also applies to this other double bill with Wang Ping's 60-minute film. You paired it with the second interrogation, right? Which is a 60-minute. Is it a documentary or like a hybrid film?
It's you can see it as a fictional film. It's called the second interrogation.
Yeah.
It was a great opportunity. Okay, again, maybe cinephiles would be more familiar with Wang Ping. Yeah, Wang Ping is already. Maybe you guys can also share. I mean, Wang Ping is already a name that's not household name, right? But maybe cinephiles knows this person.
Yeah, he's a legend. I mean, Wang Ping is a legend.
A legend to you, but maybe a general public that likes cinema. I mean, likes to watch your Marvels. Or maybe they wouldn't know what Wang Ping is. Right? So in a way, sometimes we also need to be very realistic in terms of who we are catering for, and how many people come for. Okay, Wang Ping is a known enough name. Wang Tuo, which is the other director, maybe is more known in the visual arts circuit. Okay. I mean, he's quite a well-known artist, filmmaker on his own, right? Maybe not so well-known within the cinephilic circles. But I mean, that is a quite interesting way to introduce him and his works to a crowd like yourselves. And then, I mean, the main thing why we pair them together is because what they're talking about in their films have a lot of strong affinities with each other. I mean, they're essentially about the Chinese art history, the kind of like traumas and shit that goes into it. One talks about the past, one talks about the kind of contemporary conditions that they have to live through as a result of the past. So then, sequentially as a double bill, there is a certain dialogue that happens. Yeah. So as a pairing, if you decide to commit yourself to it, it will be a very rewarding and interesting, educational, in fact, experience. That we also try to strategize for.
Yeah. Can you also talk about some of the very long films that the festival has programmed? Like, obviously, there is Wang Bing's film, there is Love Diaz's film, and there is also this French documentary called Our Body.
Yeah.
How do you think about programming films that are more than 3 hours?
How do I think about it? I think...
Yeah. Faith.
Okay. I mean, faith is one thing, but again, I go back to the idea of, again, acknowledging that this is quite subjective, but also matters, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, you can almost say that we don't really think the length is not the first thing we think about. The interest that we have in the film first comes in the first consideration. However, I mean, this applies to short films as well. Like if it's a very long film, then strategically, what do we give up to program this film? Because it sacrifices 1 or 2 other spots.
Sure.
A 4-hour film means that maybe 2 other feature films cannot be screened. Right? So then, if you want to make a very long film, it better be damn good. For us to really program it. And I think with these 3 examples, I mean, of course, there's also other things that we think about, like last year's also being, kind of like festival regular as well, and also from Southeast Asia, want to represent champion, and Wang Bing being, this year being one of his most productive years with 2 films coming out. We also want to acknowledge that as well. Him as an artist, and and Claire Simon also, is a very established documentarian of own right, and Our Body deserves definitely a spot. I mean, to me, it's one of the best films of the year. So, if you want to make a long film for us to consider, then that would be very good. Same goes to short films, right? I mean, if you make a half an hour film, short film, and I mean, like, typically short films, people look at it as the maximum 30-minute. But you make a half an hour film, we have to maybe give up 2 spots, 2 other short films. And it better be. So that's, the long and short of thinking about programming long.
Yeah, Kiwi, you are making me regret not watching Our Body. But
Okay,
you know what clashes with Our Body? It's Goodbye, Julia.
Oh, well, I mean, no, but the good thing here is that now you'll be interested in Our Body. I mean, again, we know that it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible for everyone to watch everything during the festival. But at least, now we're talking, and then, maybe you missed out on something that, there are other means maybe for you to seek out these films, hopefully. And of course, there's also the other thing about festivals, right? We are also here to try to attempt to create demand or inspire demand. And when there's a certain fervor through our programming or through our marketing, then we people want it in the cinemas. And the dream is that all the films that we handpick are some of the best of the year. They get a kind of release out of that, or let local cinema support it. Of course, in reality, that's not happening, or maybe almost impossible. But hopefully, it's like there's enough demand, then maybe someone will buy the film or screen like Our Body, for instance. Or hopefully you can watch it, I don't know, somewhere on a streaming platform where you can pay for it.
When you took over as the festival director for SGIFF, in this process of shaping the identity of this festival, did you all take any inspiration or cues from other festivals in the world, or how do you all go about it?
My first homework is to understand our own history first.
Right.
Because we've been around for a while.
Mm.
I mean, again, this year was the 34th year. We've been around for a while, but I cannot say that I understand fully what happened since 1987, right? So, I mean, the attempt was to do that first. And also, understanding evolution, right? And purposes, objectives do change along the way. I mean, there are also people that came and left and different visions of things. Then the other thing is to be able to understand positioning of the festival. What does it stand for today? What does it mean? What can it do for the larger good of the scene? So, I mean, there are a few things that I surmise, in a sense, that SGIFF remains a very fertile ground for discovery, especially for regional filmmakers, newly emerging filmmakers. Whether it's the Southeast Asian Short Film Program that almost identifies the next talent that's coming out, or through our Southeast Asian Film Lab, which also supports those first feature projects in a mentorship program. Right. So, firstly, I think that remains some of the most important things that we do. Then also to understand that we are and we should be one of the most important film festivals in Asia, and then that remains in a sense that we need to match up to that standard. There's a programming, there's a what we put in competition, so how we dialogue with the other scene. So I can talk a bit about the history of the film festival here. So SIFF or SGIFF now, you can say was kind of inspired by Hong Kong, right? And Hong Kong is one of the oldest festival that really started in Asia first, and then maybe like Singapore came after, and then Busan came after that.
Yeah,
Busan was inspired by Singapore, and of course conditions are different. I mean, with the market, the industry growth, Singapore cannot compare with Hong Kong and South Korea. So of course our kind of pathways are different, our growth are, but at least as a film festival, we can still stand for something, and and these are things that we need to maintain and respect the kind of legacy that was before all of us. Yeah,
cool. I think related to John's question, because obviously within a Southeast Asian context, SGIFF is the most successful festival. In the Asian context, you have Busan International Film Festival and Tokyo International Film Festival, which I'm not sure if you agree with me, which are currently the two leading film festivals in Asia. How do you think about SGIF's positioning relative to these two festivals when it comes to Asian cinema? I think obviously a key differentiation is SGIF focuses on Southeast Asian cinema, but on a more macro level, in an Asian context, how do you think SGIF differentiates itself from the two other international film festivals in Busan and in Tokyo?
Some things we can compete, some things we can't. There's a reality of things. What we can't compete: film history, film market, and industry setup, right? So like Busan, like Tokyo, they have a film market that's under the umbrella of the festival that organizes. That brings in a lot of resources, right? In terms of like filmmakers, press, and of course they have, in honest truth, they have more resources than us, so that's easier to bring in more headliners. And also then infrastructure as well. They have better infrastructure in terms of cinema halls, venues, and experience, in terms of, I mean, people that are at these places have been around since the start. So there is actually a proper kind of experience transference, experience legacy going into this thing. not across just 2-3 years of my time that I have. So these are things that we cannot. So we have to be very realistic. The one thing that maybe we could think of competing is that doesn't cost, that doesn't really cost that much is programming. What we select, what we stand for, what we're trying to identify ourselves to. So I guess, I mean, this is again my own interpretation, but if you do look into these festivals, these two festivals in particular, they are much larger than us. They're screening like maybe, I mean, this is just a number that I'm giving. I'm not sure. We need to check, but maybe like more than 100, 200 titles. Yeah? Sometimes that means that it might not be the most sharpened duration because there's a lot of things that they have to consider and accommodate. So in a way, I'm actually very glad to work with a scale much smaller than theirs, because that actually allows the duration to speak through a bit better. Yeah. And also, I mean, yes, we want to focus on Southeast Asian cinema. I mean, for me, I also think that we need to think a bit bigger. We also should be, be one of the vanguards for Asian cinema. So we need to think about regionally a bit bigger in terms of ambition. Sometimes smaller is better. Yeah. And we can compete in ways that we can compete with ways that we can afford to. And I want to say one that I think it's also important that we also don't see ourselves as just so-called a community center for like the region. I think that's also a very dangerous way of thinking. And sometimes things get political. In the scene, there's a lot of interpersonal relationships to think about. But I think at the core of it, we must be objective. And that's where the kind of merits go, how we decide. So I feel like those principles still need to be upheld. At the end of the day, hopefully people can see that through our work. That's what I really say.
Let's say I'm an Asian filmmaker. I have finished my debut or sophomore feature, and let's say I'm very lucky. I got accepted into SGIFF's Asian feature film competition. I also got accepted into Busan's, maybe one of their new current section, and also into the competition section at Tokyo International Film Festival. How would you convince this filmmaker to choose to world premiere their film at SGIFF?
The truth is, maybe I wouldn't. The truth is this, like, I mean, we also think for the filmmakers and we have to put the cap on for them, right? In the sense that realistically, like I said, I mean, these two festivals have more resources than us at this stage, right? And they have more press. And so if they get accepted in both places, firstly, I'm very sure that Busan and Tokyo, this said filmmaker can only choose one. It's an either-or situation in terms of how the premier status game works in festivals. So, if the other festival can guarantee, again, more resources poured into it, more exposure, more press, more hospitality package for the film team, more than Singapore, then, but if the film is so good, then SGIFF accepts minimum Singapore premiere, and that's fine. We also don't have to keep playing this game.
Yeah.
To me, as long as the good cinema, quality cinema that's worth introducing to audience, they are being included in our program for those reasons, then that's good enough. And if you get better exposure for the health of the run of the film after the festival live, go ahead, use the festivals, use this as resource. And I'm not here to simply play the game against the super bigger players. That's what I think.
Well said. Also curious, obviously there are Singapore films in both the Singapore panorama and also in the Asian feature film competition. How do you decide which Singapore film to put in the competition section and to put in the panorama section?
I'll go back to the same word. I mean, and this is, I mean, as best as possible, I'm not trying to offend anyone, but it's really based on merit, right? I think, and I mean, maybe, I mean, if you guys know this year's lineup, maybe there's a bit more noise, a bit more hoo-ha about the competition films. No, maybe, you know, it did, these films did premiere at other festivals first, so we have some accolades that came through that is worth noting as well. And it is worth noting for us as programmers, because we also need to understand audience demand, one audience clamoring for to watch. So there's something that we also have to think about when we are being oriented. So, but at the end of the day, it's also just back to merits. I think those three films are the ones that deserve.
Right.
Maybe one thing, I mean, maybe one thing people can argue is that, oh, maybe why three films, so many films? Why not just one film? Or like, oh, does this films really deserve to be competing in the Asian feature film competition in relation to others? Sure, of course, again, it's subjective and debatable, but at the same time, we need to know our biases.
Sure.
And I think there's also almost a kind of like, you can call it like a civic responsibility.
Something that needed to be done, kind of thing. Right?
We need to be the ones, if no one is really doing it, we need to be the ones that platform our own purpose. I think that's
right.
Show to our purpose here also. So in the end, it wasn't so much of, we didn't have so much of qualms going into giving it kind of like free film in competition or record.
Yeah.
This was a very productive year for Singapore feature film.
The Southeast Asian short film competition, you know, from the previous years, you know, having seen the selections, it seems to be more inclined towards more experimental films or films of more slow cinema kind of nature. Is this something that is, you feel it is just the state of Southeast Asian short film cinema, or is I don't know, is it also another like bias thing or something like that?
Firstly, I think I don't want to give people the wrong impression that we are favoring a certain expression over the other.
Sure.
I think that was the case, and or at least that was not consciously kind of deliberated.
Sure.
About, right? So what I can say is that maybe the team that I'm working with, which includes myself also, we want to be a bit more open-minded in terms of what, you know, a short form, short film, right? And I mean, you know, maybe filmmakers like yourselves would know also that actually the short film format allows for a lot of like experimentation. I mean, firstly, what is experimental is it can be already argued. Right? I mean,
sure,
in a lot of ways, like a lot of films, even where they are, maybe say genre works or narrative works, but they might have experimented something in the format that makes it interesting. So I think what I can say is that I think my team right now are a bit open-minded in terms of what a film could look like, especially in a short form. And also then when you talk about the state of short filmmaking now, perhaps they have always been around. I mean, people have always been making films like that. They're not included in kind of vessels that we are now a bit more conscious of. We want to bring in, but it's not that, you know, you make a experimental film, short film, then we are more inclined to flag your film.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely not the bias that we would like to project.
So it's more like what the team is looking at in terms of merits. It's the possibilities of what the short form can stretch towards.
I think we want to be encouraged by different ways of again using the short form.
Right.
I mean, what would be interesting, what is not, kind of like done and dusted and quite old. Again, I mean, I want to emphasize that if it's a very strong narrative film, which we have programmed in the last couple of years, that does the formula or the format to its extreme,
Sure.
then it deserves to be selected as well. And we do look out for that. But of course, if it's like tried and tested formulas, then I mean, okay, let's just say this. If it's a technically very accomplished, maybe we're not always looking out for that or always so interested.
Right.
Within a region where resources are not equally distributed in different countries. So we are also aware of the problems as well. Yeah. So we don't discriminate against forms. I think it's just more exciting when there's a mixture of different things. So, yeah, I mean,
Okay. Cool.
Hopefully that doesn't convey like bias. We have gone through a lot of not very good stuff. Let's just say that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Kay, this year is your third year at the festival.
Yep.
If you can you reflect on these 3 years at the festival? Like what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about the film making in our part of the region, Southeast Asia? And I'm not sure if the program director has a fixed tenure, and because it seems like the previous 2 program directors left after 2 years. So what's your future plans at SGIFF?
It's just a summary. So my first year, which was in 2021, I was recruited and I joined in late June. And again, this was a very tumultuous year, with a lot of things changing. It was like, again, a kind of like half pandemic year, but there's also when rules are like a bit off and on and off. So it's hard to plan for something like that. So it was an addition where there were a lot of uncertainty and a lot of things needs to be quickly done within a very short span of time. So I had to basically cobble out a festival within 3 months' time, and this includes like starting from zero, starting from recruitment, then working together with a new team, and then coming, and also me, doing this for the first time. So I think with those circumstances, I'm satisfied with what we put in. So, but that was almost like year zero, thinking about it. So we survived. I survived. Then the following year, which was last year, was a completely new challenge and completely new experience in the sense that there's expectations of going back to a fully physical one. And it's also about trial and error. It's also about learning. Again, acknowledging the fact that I've not directed kind of like a full-fledged physical festival to that point. So I had to be very conscious of that. So, so then that comes with its own set of challenges. Then, like I said, trial and error, I have to learn some stuff. There were mistakes that were made and we learned. And then I think coming to this year, would be maybe the year that I'm most satisfied with. Because, I had 2 years to kind of like learn the ropes, learn the industry, and also implement certain new things that I think will improve the festival that finally can come to fruition. But then to me, this is the kind of like maturation year. And then hopefully moving forward, it's refining further in terms of what we do, and hopefully also finding enough avenues for more resources to level up what we can achieve. So back to what my plans are. Of course, I don't call the shots here. I mean, I don't decide my appointment. Hopefully, people want me to do, right? And then these are my stakeholders in sport. And I think as far as I'm concerned, I would like to think that I will be involved in next year. So, I mean, that's definitely the commitment I can tell.
Yeah, and just curious to know, what did you learn about running an international film festival that you didn't expect was going to be a crucial part of the job?
Okay, to be honest with you, I don't think I did not expect anything, especially crucial, big things. I think it's more getting to terms with them. Okay, like for instance, just to give you an example of what I'm talking about. So for instance, this idea that as a public-facing national film festival, we also need to involve like maybe the showbiz part of things, which is also very much part of the media industry. So then there's something that I came from a background, cultural institution background, that doesn't quite necessarily need me to be involved in that sector. But now I think I have to be aware of that. I mean, and there's also part of kind of courting VIP people, VIP guests, and that would be very much, now I learn that part of my responsibility as well. So then being acquainted with that sector, and maybe John will know a bit more about that sector as well. So that's one thing that I have to learn my ropes. And also I think for me is being more comfortable in a leadership role, because now I'm not just working in silo or a small team. We're still a small team relatively, like, compared to other festivals, but it's also being able to learn how to delegate. This last time I just take everything on myself. That's what I am used to. But now learning to delegate and trust is another leadership skill that I have to embark on. So I mean, these are just a few facets that running. I mean, assuming such a big responsibility, I'll have to really come to terms.
Right. And now we've come to our quickfire round. Your favorite film in the Asian feature competition?
Okay, firstly, I would like to preface this. I do acknowledge that it's a bit tricky,
right,
for me to say my favorites, especially in competition.
Sure.
So maybe we will phrase this as like maybe standout films.
Correct. Yeah, standout films that kind of spoke to you more or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So okay. In the Asia Feature Film Competition, something that I was really pleased with is the Tenants.
Oh.
So because discovery by us,
right.
It will premiere at SGIFF,
yeah,
and it won 2 big awards: the Progressive Award and the Best Director Award.
Yeah.
So we are very satisfied with discovering this film and sharing it with the world.
Right. We really like the film.
Yeah. Very well deserved. Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Right. Okay. The film that kind of stood out to you in the Singapore Panorama feature selection.
Okay, the film Wonderland by Kay Wee, because I was there. So I feel like in terms of audience reception, in terms of getting that kind of like rapport, it had the kind of like festival spirit to it.
Right.
And it spoke to a lot of, I would say, general audience. So I think that was a very nice experience. And I would also like to give a special mention to Sean Neo's film, My Endless Numbered Days, which also premiered at the festival. I think it's a bit of a charming sleeper hit that maybe people are not like taking notice at the first glance. But I think it is someone to actually experience it and then understand the kind of like mild flavors, subtleties.
Right.
So I also quite appreciate it.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Next one, the film that's stood out in the altitude section.
I think the films that we picked there, I mean, at least of course in our team's subjectivities, we feel like these are filmmakers that are really mature and really understand life condition, and you see through it in the kind of like images and stories. So they are all about kind of the psychologies of people within their societies. I mean, there's a kind of like accidental trend that happens throughout this whole section. One of my favorite ones, or standout ones that I would say is, okay, I'll be a bit biased. I would say The Shadowless Tower.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Because it was here.
Yeah.
And then of course you get to, I mean, I was the moderator for it, so I get to also dialogue with them.
Yeah.
And then also through the festival, get to know the person and friend guy, and then see like him was actually kind of like his character's
Yeah.
his. I think that was quite a fascinating experience.
Right.
And also understanding his humor, his taste, his thinking, way of living. And that's very consistent to the kind of work that he puts on. So I enjoyed that within the festival.
Right. It was so interesting with Shadowless Tower because I thought that was my first Zhang Lu film experience ever. But then I went to like search about him. I realized, right, I actually watched another film of his, right, back in SIFF 2010 called Duman River.
Yeah.
And I fell asleep for like half the film because and then I was like, oh, that filmmaker made that film. It was like, well, I couldn't put that together. It was quite a moment. Right.
Yeah, but yeah, I for Shadows Tower, I really like the film. I think it was almost it focuses on not, it doesn't have like fixed shows on life, especially within a China context. About the micro details and how effortless you just like portrays the stories about these characters. And the subtlety to it and how the effortless really appreciated it.
It really stayed with us.
Hey, Kay Wee, can you share more about what it's like to hang out and talk to Zhang Lu? Like, what do you guys talk about? Any interesting things you learned from him?
It's not so different from the film, sometimes. Just casual about. I mean, of course. I mean, the first conversation is about Singapore. This is his first time ever in Singapore.
Oh, okay.
And then the things that he said, like, obviously he feels it's very noisy.
Right.
And you have to understand where he comes from. He comes from he comes from Yin, which is where Anthony Chen shot the Breaking Ice.
Right. Yeah.
So and just casual stuff,
Right.
But within the kind of like small talk, you get to know the person, and I'm sure he also and then again, like I said, like festivals are some of the most important things about festivals. Actually, this time, so you get to meet these people and then interact with them. And I have the privilege of being in a position to have access to them.
Cool.
Yeah, he's a very, I mean, in a nutshell, he's a very chill. There's no airs about him. Not much
Right.
hierarchical thing.
Okay, the next one, the film that stood out to you the most in the foreground section.
I'm getting to that. Okay, I think this one maybe is a bit straightforward and easy for me. Poor Things would be kind of like representative of what we thought of this section. So something with, of course, artistic quality, with credibility in terms of the filmmaker, the talents as well, and also something that's quite genre driven, but also gives something new in terms of the genre conventions.
Right.
And but in all, a very attractive film that was sold out.
Right.
So in terms of it being foreground, it kind of really matches the plot.
Sure.
But I will give a special mention to this film called Art College 1994. So this animation work by Liu Jian. Why I give this special mention is because in a way, thinking about foreground and what attracts people, the social media posts that we posted about this film, which is a kind of short reel, like had the most number of like engagements and helped increase like thousands of followers on SGIFF's Instagram.
Nice.
Just and it's a bit random, but it had like 100,000+ engagements.
Oh wow!
Which is 100 times more than a lot of our social media posts.
Oh wow!
And it actually trended around the world because I'm observing the Instagram.
Oh my god!
To me, that was also something that's unexpected, but also quite indicative of what we think of foreground worthy.
Right. We are
just curious. What is that Instagram post about, and why do you think it trended?
It's a short scene. I mean, it's kind of like a snippet from the film, and it's about the two protagonists, these two college students, debating about what art is when they went to an exhibition, and then it was about this object, art object, mattress, and then they were debating whether this art. So it was kind of like fun and and it trended around the world because people was quite fascinated.
Sure.
That history and Chinese students, which maybe is not so common.
Right.
An impression of Chinese people. Maybe,
Right.
I mean, this conjecture.
Wow.
So, I mean, you never know what will trend. Actually.
Yep.
Yes.
Favorite film or standout film in the Horizon section?
I mean, it's a bit of a sleeper hit, this one. But I really like this film called Slow. I don't think a lot of people...
Right.
I mean, I'm sure you had one screening at the festival. But it was one of the most tender, most beautiful performances, directed performances that I've seen of the year. And maybe it's not something that's so obvious to people, but it's also about a quite rare issue that was spoken about, which is about asexuality.
Right.
Attraction, asexuality. And I think that it forms a very interesting premise in these two lovers.
Sure.
So won the directing prize in Sundance this year. Just that really not as high profile as some of these other films, but
Sure.
deserving of support. It's a Lithuanian, I believe it's a Lithuanian
film. Yeah.
I believe this is the debut feature.
Nice.
The director.
Nice.
So that's one I would recommend. Actually. But I mean, I'll pick one favorite. It's just something that's a bit of a personal bias. Yeah.
Okay. The film that stood out to you in Standpoint?
We mentioned Our Body by Claire Simon. I think quite a... I mean, it's a bit of slow burning documentary, but it's quite a masterpiece. In real dissect the female body and the care and demands it takes of people inhabiting them and what it takes to care for them within this healthcare structure. And it's, from the outset, it feels like a very clinical looking film because most of the film is set in the hospital, but it's maybe perhaps one of the most humane films of the year. Yeah. And the length, I believe, is deserved because it manages to capture different portraits of women in all its variations, all its varied forms. So there's one, I feel. And then, I mean, I will do a special mention as well to Tedious Days and Nights, which is also a film by SGIFF, working with us, about a bunch of fresh poets from China dwelling around their lives.
Right.
And consequences of maybe history and I would say even historical trauma that led to their presence.
Nice.
So that was quite a refreshing discovery that we found. We're happy to share it. Yep.
Cool.
Standouts
from this year's SGIFF.
Where is your favorite place to watch a film? Cine Leisure Projector, Golden Mile Projector, National Museum, the Cinematheque, or Oldham Theatre?
Maybe I'm biased. I would say Oldham. Plus because of history, but I think honestly because it's rather relatively small. The seats are comfortable, and I don't have to. Okay, firstly, I don't have to deal with bad seats, which some of these venues have not so comfortable seats. So that place have comfortable seats, and it's also the distance between the seats and the screen and the relative size to it is quite appropriate, and that encourages immersion. Of course, I've gripes about that venue. I mean, I won't share it here, but out of the where I feel like people really just go there to watch films, like, not to eat popcorn or not to do other things, like go there to be seen by other people, like not such frills. I think Oldham is where quite a purist way of encountering cinema.
Nice.
Yeah.
Which is your favorite international film festival besides SGIFF?
I would say, as a kind of model to look to, maybe I would say Berlinale. Because maybe compared to like Cannes Film Festival, for instance. Cannes Film Festival is quite a complete industry-centered festival. And that has its own place, right? But then I think Berlin has both the industry sector and also very audience-facing.
Yeah.
Like when you actually get the chance to go to Berlinale, actually, regular people are audiences.
Sure.
And you have like full house for like the most difficult looking, right? This kind of experimental films, like people actually show up, which also says a lot about the cultivation of just the people in the city.
Yeah.
And how the cultural scene has, as a legacy and how it's lost it.
Right.
So that is quite aspiring. Of course, they also have the right infrastructure for it, the right platform. So I think Berlinale so far, I mean, at least iterations last few years have been quite a model to look at.
Yeah.
But if you were to ask me, I would actually prefer smaller festivals. I really like this kind of kampong festivals where you go and then you just constantly have connection. So I mean, I'll just name one festival that I went to early this year actually. It's called the Berwick Film Festival. The northernest part of UK.
Wow.
So it's like this small fishing town. I went there, but it's really interesting expression. I mean, new expressions, interesting cinema. It's not so big. People just gather at the same community center every day at a proper theater, and they give out awards, but everyone selected in that category, the competitive category, is an award winner. So all the nominees are already award winners. So in a way, the whole mentality is to just reward films and don't have to go through this kind of jury process to pick who is better than the other.
Right.
So it's more of a communal environment rather than a competitive environment. So I think I also very much appreciate. I think
Yeah, I fully agree with the Berlin Film Festival. I went there once, and I was surprised. Really, is regular folk like you and I, we just go in to watch the films.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how the kind of cinephilic fervor and culture you can really see it at a place like that.
Right.
And to me, it's like Berlin as a city is like a success story in this regard.
Okay.
Next question.
All right. Next question. Who is your favorite Southeast Asian filmmaker?
Oh, okay. I would say someone that stands out to me that I feel like hasn't really been spoken a lot of. So I think I want to mention this person. So I really appreciate Kunska Pasitivoraku. I don't know if you guys know him. So
No.
in I think 2018 or 2017, his film was screened at SGIFF for Homogeneous Empty Time. So he's a Thai filmmaker, and I think subsequently he has other films that are very provocative, very very thoughtful, very provocative, and of course not allowed to screen at a lot of places. Arguably, maybe with, but I appreciate what he regards cinema as for himself, as a urgent expression. There's also something that's equally political but also artistic. And if you watch his films, you will know that this is also a very mature person. Really knows how to share his perspective about life in very subtle, innovative ways. So this is a Southeast Asian filmmaker I would recommend you guys to check out if you guys haven't watched stuff.
Right. Cool.
All right. Our final few questions. What is your favorite guilty pleasure film?
Okay, so because you prepared some guideline questions for me, so thankfully I had the chance to think about it, or else I'll just start over. But I thought about it, and I remembered I completely enjoyed the Lego movie. I don't know if you guys watched it. The first one. I think of course you think of it as a kind of like gimmick, right? Selling Lego. But to my surprise, I'm a sucker for good humor or self-deprecating, so it has lots of that. and offers a lot of pop culture reference and actually some subtlety and even some meta narratives that I would argue quite intelligent. So that tickled my brain and made me laugh a lot. And great entertainment on movie. Maybe not so much about the subsequent sequels, but I think the first one was a good reading pleasure.
Next one. Are you a Marvel or a DC guy?
I appreciate Marvel's business plan, the trajectory. I can't say the same for DC. So in that sense, and I think Marvel's humor, I mean mostly is smarter than whatever DC can dish out. So yeah, more of a Marvel fan, and I do catch some of these films or even a series. Right? Yeah.
Okay, I got two questions that just came to my mind. Right, the first one is, if you were trapped on an island for the rest of your life, what film would you pick to watch for the rest of your life?
Wow. Okay. I think it cannot be. I don't think it cannot be a depressing film. Honestly,
Twin Peaks.
And, so Twin Peaks will suffer your mind.
Yeah.
When you're alone on the island, you also don't want you. I think you need something comforting, something positive to go on with your life. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for you yet, but I don't know. Maybe
Anyone?
just think. Yeah, maybe is it Boy? Boy by Linklater.
Oh, Boyhood.
Boyhood.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that
Boyhood.
Right. Maybe so that I can just spend my time reflecting about my past.
Right.
Yeah. So there's more comforting rather than confronting the future alone on an island. That's my simple rationale.
Okay, last question. I mean, it's not a quick fire question, but what advice would you give to someone who is looking into a career into film programming? I think also taking into account the fact that, as you mentioned earlier, the Singapore, I don't know how you call it, the film programming scene is very small. There aren't a lot of openings to go around. So how would you encourage an aspiring film programmer to think about his aspiration?
I feel like I feel like it's I don't know whether it's a bit disingenuous for me to just say that, you just need to work hard lah, or need to, because I also acknowledge that because the industry is quite in its infancy, in the sense that it hasn't really cultivated a lot of career paths for this particular practice. A lot of things don't just come down to girth or like labor or luck. I mean, it's a lot down to opportunity and timing, and whether you are able to use that. All I can say is that maybe rather than thinking of film programming as the be all and end, rather just continue to cultivate yourself, like as a whether as a cinephile or someone that thinks about film or writes about film, or if you are very interested in curation, go ahead and try to do something on your own, like independently. I mean, don't need to wait for any institution to hand you an opportunity. Like go out there and do something. And maybe these are the ways that you can stand out. Like people can get to see you, what you stand for, your kind of flavor and taste going in. And then maybe that's the kind of defining thing that it gets you noticed and gets the opportunity handed. Yeah. Everyone has different fates, right? In the sense. I mean, I acknowledge that I was lucky in my trajectory, that I had opportunities handed. Timing was right. I can't say so for other people. Maybe haven't had the chance. So, but just keep practicing and focusing on yourself to watch and be interested and write and dialogue, think. So, I mean, as gonna end off, I also feel like then this is very much this conversation that we're having, this podcast that we're having, is very much part of that. To continue to engage, and in your own independent ways, right? With listeners, with people that you also create a certain sense of spirit and community. So just I'm very glad that you guys are doing it on your own time and labor and time, and this is not something that we can take for granted, lah. So you guys should give yourself a pat on the shoulder. That's what I can say. And I also understand.
Right.
Yeah. On this note, that I also know that everyone here is also kind of like hustling in their own ways, while still trying to maintain your vigor and fervor or interest in cinema. And it's easy for me to say, "I'll keep at it," but sometimes passion can't be the only thing that runs your drive for things. But try to find something for yourself. Like John, for instance, like keep making films within your means if you can. People are watching. I'm looking at it. I've always been looking out. Saping also, like, keep watching, keep thinking, writing, talking, and every option you can is right. And then these things, somewhat people will watch it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, and with that, we've come to the end of another episode of the Chapalang Term Podcast.